Chard's The EAVESDROPPERS. So if you don't know about us, NeWest is an independent publishing house located in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And every day during the pandemic, I've been reading from our backlist of titles to give you something else to think about at 1 o'clock each day. And I actually ran out of print titles in my house after about 50 episodes. So now we're moving on to ebook backlist. But these are available in print if you like them. And I think this has one of the nicest covers we've ever made. It's beautiful. You can't really tell on here, but you should look at a print one or an ebook yourself. It looks really good. So anyway, Rosie Chard's The EAVESDROPPERS. Rosie's published 3 books with us, I think. Seal and Test and Raincoat, which is a kind of climate fiction book about a super winter storm that hits Winnipeg. The Insistent Garden, which is a sort of domestic insanity thriller thing where a young girl growing up in 60s England, her father is obsessed with the person next door and keeps wallpapering the wall because he thinks he's too noisy. And then The EAVESDROPPERS, which is also about obsessed English people. Let me just tell you, I'll tell you what the back cover copy says. Okay, so when social attitudes researcher Bill Harcourt puts an advertisement in the newspaper for listeners to work on an unconventional project, he anticipates that his team of eavesdroppers will discover previously untapped insights into public opinion. But as 5 eager listeners begin eavesdropping in the cafes, dentist waiting rooms, public toilets, tube trains, and laundrettes of London, discreetly noting the details of unguarded conversations, Bill starts to notice subtle changes in their behavior and realizes he has underestimated the compulsive nature of his group. His anxiety is compounded after he receives a series of anonymous letters warning him of the dangers of his experiment. As the group becomes increasingly intertwined in their subjects' lives, eavesdropping descends into obsession, and Bill has to find a way to rein in his increasingly unruly team before they are beyond help. Informed by conversations collected over 3 years, EAVESDROPPERS by award-winning author Rosie Chard is a dark yet wryly humorous tale of present-day Londoners living in a constant state of noise and crowds and eavesdropping. Praise for The EAVESDROPPERS, a creepy ambush of the novel, unsettling and profound in its fears and ideas and fears. One feels the weight of history and of the future. One hears a warning. Michelle Butler Hallett, author of This Marlowe. At an address somewhere between Bletchley Park and Franz Kafka's house, Rosie Chard locates a curious and compelling tale about a group of life's outsiders who find meaning, and much worse, when they're tasked with listening in. Part spy thriller in miniature, part fatal for our disconcerting times, EAVESDROPPERS is funny and haunting and achingly human. Ian Weir, author of Will Starling and The Death and Life of Strother Purcell. And Quill Inquirer says, the third novel from Rosie Chard is a potent but entertaining commentary on our modern surveillance society. That's a really interesting book because eavesdropping on people, does that still exist when people just put their thoughts out on YouTube, like right now, or on Twitter, or on Facebook? Why would you need to eavesdrop when everyone's talking all the time? So, let's read a little bit from the first chapter. Chapter 1. Can you hear me? Mr. Harcourt, can you hear me? I thought I was alive. My fingers were moving, my nose itched, yet I was detached from the world. Something lay on my face, a binding of sorts. It stopped me opening my eyes and seeing where I was. I felt a twinge of panic at the base of my throat. Everything's all right, Mr. Harcourt. A female voice beside my ear. The surgery went well. A voice, just a voice, sugar-coated and impatient. I couldn't judge the distance of the disembodied sound, so far away, that I could feel breath on my cheek. I could smell coffee wafting up from my stomach. Was this person about to kiss me? I struggled to remember where I was. A faint smell of antiseptic, a rustle of rubber curtains. Then, yes, the details of a face poured in. Tired, bloodshot eyes and eyebrows that were badly plucked. The nurse had missed a bit just above her left eye, and with sudden clarity, I recalled my thoughts as the gurney had been pushed through the double doors. Could a nurse with badly plucked eyebrows be trusted to hand over the correct scalpel? Why can't I see, I said, trying to keep the slur from my voice. It's the bandage, dear. A pause. Over your eyes. I imagined a child in the room, so laden was her voice with condescension. I waited for the child to retort, but all I heard was my own breathing and the sound of something being dragged down a nearby corridor. A bag of clean sheets, perhaps? Or a bag of bones? I said, my tongue sticking to the roof of my mouth. You're back in the room. The room? I tried again to recall where I'd spent the last few hours, but the only room I could remember bumped and rattled along the ground at speed. Can I go back to sleep now? Yes, you can go back to sleep, but wait, just a couple of questions. What year is it? I tried to visualize numbers. 2000, 2015, no, 18. 2018. Correct. How old are you? 34. The air held a pause. Could I be wrong? Also correct. Finally, where are you? Tight within the bandage, my brain struggled to form a picture of the route to the place that now held me. Inside, yes. The hospital without doubt, but where? For how long had the siren screamed into my brain? I concentrated on my ears, my most reliable sense. So reliable they could pick up the distant throb of a black cab. London, I said. Correct. You can go back to sleep now. Mr. Harcourt, Mr. Harcourt. My thoughts snapped to attention. I was no longer a dullard, a woozy patient in post-op. I was sharp as a pencil. Who's there? Nurse Rigby. The sugar had melted from her throat. You the same person as before? I heard her chest rise and fall. Yes, I'm the same person as before. I tried to roll my 2 days. 2 days in the dark. The bandages felt tight already, and with a new twinge of panic, I tried to visualize how I'd aim straight into the bowl of a hospital toilet. Will I be getting a dog? I said. Faked innocence is entirely about the eyes. I realized this as I waited, trying to hear her laugh or at the very least hear a smile, but lips turning up at the corners make no noise at all. Is that meant to be a joke, Mr. Harcourt? I sighed, just like her. Flat on my back with a bandage over my face, it was impossible to be myself. That half-raised eyebrow I used so often to project sarcasm was immobilized, and it was difficult to tease someone with your nose. And it was nigh on impossible to look sheepish with a bandage over your eyes. I'm going to feed you now, said the nurse. Forget pissing on the toilet seat. Forget the anonymous breath on my cheek. This woman was going to feed me now. I'm really not that hungry. I heard the tut of her tongue. Then I heard what sounded like glue being whipped up with a spoon before the immortal words cut the air. You need to eat to keep your strength up. Defeat was not sweet. The 5-year-old me opened his mouth and tipped back his head. Such tepid mush I'd never experienced from my mother, but luckily it was quickly over, my mouth wiped with a rough cloth and the rattle of bowls being put away. Icy hands, why always icy, began making the bed with me still in it. I lay stiff, mulling over the hospital protocol concerning the making of beds while still occupied. No, do you mind if I make the bed, Mr. Harcourt? And no, I'll just tuck this bit under your chin, sir. Just strange hands glancing private parts. I think you're done, Mr. Harcourt, the nurse said after the sheet was tightened somewhere down my feet, sealing me in like a piece of vacuum-packed fish. I'll be back later to check on your temperature. The idea of being done quickly quashed all speculation on unfamiliar hands in private places. But before I could utter a comeback, I heard a whoosh of hospital-starch skirts, as I imagined them, and was left alone, as assumed. And a sentence was deposited at my ear. If you need any help, just press this. Disturbed that the starch skirts scenario could be so wrong, I fingered a plastic object that had been placed into my hand. Okay. People could clearly come and go without my knowing it. I lay still for several minutes before I felt satisfied I was alone. Found it bare. Bastards, I thought they've nicked my watch. I gingerly tested the space bed. A table was uncomfortably out of reach, but by wrenching my arm out from my sheeted bondage and stretching out, I could explore its surface. A plastic cup with water inside, I surmised by sniffing it, and a card that tipped over at my touch. Who'd send me a card? Plus my wristwatch. How cheerful it sounded pressed against my ear. But I soon grew weary of the chipper little sound and strapped it, with surprising difficulty for an activity so familiar, back onto my wrist. For a while, I lazily formed a picture in my mind of the nurse tidying her eyebrows in the ladies' loo. Then I fingered the callback object, resisting the urge to press nurse just for the sheer hell of it. Finally, I sank down into my pillow. It smelled funny and creaked a bit. My God, there was nothing to do in a hospital bed with a bandage over your eyes. Nothing to do but lie back and listen. So yeah, that's where Harcourt gets the idea for his eavesdropping campaign from the hospital stay. But he recruits a group of weirdos, basically, the sort of people who would respond to an ad in the newspaper saying, hey, you should start listening on your friends and family. And the craziest thing about this is that it's real. There's a organization in England that has been eavesdropping on people since the 1930s. I don't remember the name of it off my head. I'd have to look it up. But It was a market research thing that started in the 30s and then went through the war. And every year they put out a kind of guidebook of what English people are thinking and their opinions towards things. So even before social media and people shouting out their opinions on things all the time, in England at least, people were always listening to you. I don't know what it is about that place, but it always seems to lend itself to dystopian scenarios and people spying on each other. Maybe it's the being on an island thing. So yeah, that's The Eavesdroppers by Rosie Chard. She's a great author. She's moved back to England, but she lived in Winnipeg for many years. So that's where we got a hold of her. And yeah, I really like this book. I think it's really interesting and fun. Yeah, there we go. So if you're interested in checking this book out, it is available in print, as I said earlier. If you go to alllitup.ca, I'll put a link on Twitter. You can grab your own print copy. It's a really beautiful design from Michelle Vrana. But if you're looking to get an ebook version like this easily, just type The Eavesdroppers or Rosie Chard in your ebook device, and you should be able to get it instantaneously. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow with another episode of NeWest Press Video.